Shlishi, this Tuesday, it's Purim Katan, and of course, as we all know, 24 years ago today, the Rebbe gave us the Ma'amar Veata Teztave. And like I said a number of times already that for some reason, I guess the kasha should be a fakete. I'm reliving Nun Beis every day. I'm reliving 24 years ago that month. In hindsight, I guess if you have to describe what Adar and Tafshun Nun Beis was like, in other words, the month in which the Rebbe had the stroke, some Sof Chedesh. So first of all, one of those really, really weird details, which is really a little bit earth-shattering, is that as far as we know, the Rebbe was never Mechadish the Levana. The Rebbe didn't do Kiddush Levana. The Rebbe didn't go home, which means he didn't do it at his home. He had to have done it at 770. Now, the Rebbe was here 24 hours a day. Could he have come out at 2 o'clock in the morning and done Kiddush Levana? It's possible. But nobody saw the Rebbe Mechadish Levana. Now, I had a student then. Today he's a Chassidish younger man who's past 40 years old, but then he was in his teens. And he was very makusha to the Rebbe. He's still very makusha to the Rebbe. And he would come to yeshiva every day and bemoan, when is going to be Kiddush Levana? And his friends would laugh at him. It became already a joke. You know, after Vavar Zayin B'Chedesh, you would expect the Rebbe to be Mechadish Levana. The Rebbe was never Mechadish Levana. And he complained about it, and his friends teased him. I didn't complain about it, and I certainly didn't tease him, because I had heard that it says in Sfarim that if a person does Kiddush Levana, it protects them from an asin, it protects them from an accident. And I remember I had a Malamid who told this to me when I was a Bar Mitzvah Bacher. So I asked him, so how did the Friedrich ever pass away in Yud Shvat? So he said to me, there wasn't a moon a single day in Shvat that year. That's what he told me. So when a student of mine, very innocently, was complaining about Kiddush Levana, it shook me. When he turned 40, I spoke at his 40th birthday party, so I reminded him of that Adar. I reminded him how he made believe he didn't remember, but believe me, he remembered. So that's just one of those little details about Adar and Tafshin and Beis that come back to you. But as I started to say, if you needed to describe Adar, Tafshin and Beis, it was a Chodesh of pure giving. Pure giving. In other words, the tone wasn't so freilich. The Rebbe's mood wasn't good. Shvat, the Rebbe was much happier. Bechlal Nun Beis was a freilich a year. But Adar, as soon as Adar started, the mood by the Rebbe changed immediately. Mrs. Lapine was killed Beis Adar. Mrs. Lapine. The Rebbe took it so personally. I spoke about it twice at least. The whole mood of the Rebbe in Adar Rishon was not freilich. He repeatedly said, 60 days of Simcha, Mevatel Dinim, Batel B'Shishim. We were dancing here. We were dancing here after the stroke also. Another expression which the Rebbe used very many times that Adar was Bori Mazle, that the mazel of Adar is Bori. Bori means healthy, but Bori also means, if he needed to mean, Zichir, for sure, certain, like Bori V'Shema, Bori Yodif. That was another thing. But the trademark of the Chodesh was giving. Remember, the Rebbe started a minig in the middle 80s, let's say Memvav Mem Zayin, to give dollars, besides for Sunday, every single time he spoke. Every time he spoke. And I remember I was already back from Shlichus, so it had to be Mem Zayin, that the Rebbe said once in a Sikha that the reason he's doing this is because he started a new minig. The Rebbe said, I started a new minig. And I'm hoping that this minig will become a contagion. In other words, other people will follow my lead. And the minig is, quote, as zwei Yidden treffen sich, soll von der Ruf a reis kommen a teva for a dritten Yidden. Those are the Rebbe's words. That if two Jewish people meet, it should bring a teva for a third Jew. So the Rebbe, every time he spoke, gave dollars. And the significance of giving dollars, of course, was that he gave it to somebody else. So, about 6 years be'erech, five years be'erech, before the stroke lo yaleinu, the Rebbe said this new idea that any time two Jews meet, a benefit should come to a third Jew, and he practiced it b'peil mamash. Every single time the Rebbe spoke, he gave dollars. Now, dollars on Sunday was different than the dollars which the Rebbe did as oi, because on Sunday the Rebbe would say Bracha Vatzloch. And whoever thought about it? Bracha Vatzloch is a moedendike bracha. Bracha Vatzloch is everything crunched into 2 words, a blessing for success. Bracha Vatzloch. This was the stand. Any give you a dugma. I remember once the Rebbe spoke Erev Yom Kippur. He gave us a bracha after Mincha, and the Rebbe had already given lekach, yeah? So after the Sikha, he gave dollars again. Erev Yom Kippur, he gave dollars again. Anybody wants to go again and get a dollar from the Rebbe. There were some days that you can get from the Rebbe $3, if 3 different occasions where the Rebbe spoke, and if you had chutzpah, and I don't know whatever the case was, you would get the dollar every time. Other Tafshin and days, the Rebbe spoke almost every single day. Almost every day he spoke. How do I know it? Because I was a teacher, teaching Tanya, and Ma'ariv was always sometime between 6 and 7, during the hour that I was teaching my Talmidim. I wonder why. That was the Matthias. And we were interrupted constantly. Almost every day they'd come running upstairs to Sikha. We were in Ocean Parkway then. We'd run downstairs, and we have a phone line, and we try to listen to a hookup. It was a whole disaster, the situation with the hookups. But the Rebbe spoke 4 nights a week. And in hindsight, the one way of looking at it is he was giving us messages. Another way of looking at it is Poshet Chapin Yadayim. He was using the opportunity to give and to give and to give and to give, and that's what he did. He gave and gave and gave and gave. I was at Shabbos in a shul someplace, so if I bring up my students who were then in Nun Beis before Bar Mitzvah, they were 9 or 10. These guys are around 32, 33 years old. Is Rechem. They were born Mem Daled. So in Nun Beis they were 8, 7, 8. He was a very Chassidish kid from a very Chassidish house. He was running to 770. He said he didn't go Sundays, but every time they spoke, he gave dollars. He says a bunch of dollars. Other than Nun Beis alone, you could have gotten I don't know how many dollars. Because the Rebbe gave, every time he spoke, he gave. And that's the trademark of that month. The Rebbe gave and gave and gave and gave and chapta rein and chapta and didn't miss a chance to give. And of course, in the center of all of that, the Gela Sachesedes was this Purim Veata Teztave. It was a Tuesday, and I just recently I had mixed this up, but the Rebbe did go to the oil. I said before he didn't. The Rebbe did go to the oil, but he apparently didn't come back too late. He davened Mincha, he davened Ma'ariv, and he spoke a little Sichele, and then he gave it to Kunteres. I don't know what I said to you in the past, but again, I saw it now in print. The Rebbe gave out over 8,000, not over 10,000, over 8,000, over the course of over 3 hours. What was unusual about this offering was a number of things. Number one, the Rebbe, of course, edited the Maimon. The Rebbe had already established a seder of editing Maimorim around the same time as the Rebbe started giving dollars. The Rebbe started also editing Maimorim, Mem Vav. So this was a typical thing for us. The Rebbe edited a Ma'amar Veata Teztave B'nai Yisrael. When the Rebbe edited the Ma'amar, the Rebbe wrote, Yihiratzen shetifel pu'ulasa haretzuya, which means he hopes that this Ma'amar will have the desired effect. Now, of course, the Rebbe Bechlal did not write words on a Ma'amar which he edited. The Ma'amarim were given out as a Len and Taina. Here, the Rebbe adds that he hopes it will have the desired effect, which was unusual. That's number one. And number two, the Rebbe gave us the Ma'amar in a plastic bag, a hard plastic bag, with $2 and a piece of lekach. This was unusual. Tafshin and Beis, the Rebbe gave lekach 4 times. Chav Beis Shvata also the Rebbe gave lekach with the kuntas of Chav Beis Shvata. There was a third time, besides, maybe it was Yitzchak Kislev or Chanukah, besides for Aseres Mitzvah, besides for Tisha, the Rebbe gave lekach. And the Rebbe once explained why is he giving out lekach. What does lekach have to do with Yom Tov, right? Because lekach is azisa honey, azisa cake, a piece of sweet cake. And of course the idea is that you ask for lekach. You don't just give lekach, you ask for lekach. And the significance of asking for lekach is that you should ever have to ask. B'meshach kol hashana kula, anybody, for anything, you're yaitz with lekach. Nobody wants to ask. You want the Eibush should give you. You shouldn't have to ask. So lekach you give, people ask for lekach, and you give lekach in lieu of, that if you have to ask. B'meshach hashana, yaitz with lekach. But the Rebbe gave a different type to lekach. It says in the pasuk, "Ki lekach tev nosati lochem teirosei yalta azevu." That lekach is connected to Torah. What's the connection between lekach and Torah? Because Torah is even from Muslim. L'chul lachmu b'lachmi. Torah is bread. Torah you internalize. You become one with it, and it becomes one with you. So the Rebbe says, not only are you going to internalize this Torah in your mind, you're going to internalize this Torah in your stomach. Because along with the Torah, which feeds the mind, the Rebbe gives a piece of cake, which feeds the stomach. In other words, and the cake is a part of the lekach, part of the Torah, and the Torah is a part of the lekach, part of the mezenes, and the ashpa pnimiyus should be stronger. So this is what happened. 3 times, besides for Tishrei, the Rebbe gave lekach in Tafshin Nun Beis, and the Rebbe gave us the Ma'amar Veata Teztave. The Rebbe gave that Ma'amar for a very long time. And I remember being here at the end of the event. It was close to 11 o'clock, if I'm not wrong. And the Rebbe walked out. He stopped over there in the middle of the shul because people had just come in and gave out more. He stopped right below us at the end of the shul because people had again walked in, and I understand the Rebbe stopped again by his room upstairs. The Rebbe was clearly interested in giving this away. Normally, if you came late, if you came to an offering of the Rebbe's, of a gift of the Rebbe's, late, you couldn't get it anymore. In other words, once the Rebbe left his place and the Rebbe was walking out, but on this occasion, the Rebbe was pushed desperate to give it away. Veata Teztave. Kuntas Veata Teztave. So that's, in short, the happenings of the time. Of course, 2 weeks later, minus a day, was Lo Yaleinu, the stroke. But in hindsight, there's so many different things that you can observe in hindsight, but one of the most obvious and the most plain and the most clear is what I just said, that the Rebbe was very, very interested in giving. He was giving and giving and giving and giving. That's a very simple way of understanding the events of Adar. The Rebbe was giving. The Rebbe gave out millions of dollars. I don't know if there's enough dollars the Rebbe gave out for every Jew in the world to have one, but there's a lot of dollars. The Rebbe gave and gave and gave and gave. Now, the Teuchen of the Ma'amar Veata Teztave, which is of course the subject, the content of Veata Teztave, we learn it every year Gimel Tammuz. It's the Gimel Tammuz Ma'amar, just like Basi Legani is the Yud Shvat Ma'amar, so Veata Teztave is the Gimel Tammuz Ma'amar. And the Teuchen of the Ma'amar is about the Rebbe, about a Nasi. What is the job of a Rebbe? What is the job of a Nasi Yisrael? What is the role of Moshe Rabbeinu? And of course, this Pashtusa de Moshe, Shebechol Dora V'Dora, Ein Deir She'ein Beike Moshe, the Moshe Rabbeinu of every single generation. Punkt this morning, Bashkocha Pratis, I was learning another Ma'amar. Because the class I'm going to give you on Friday, Lineda. I was preparing it this morning. So I came across an expression that in the Megillas Esther, Mordechai is called Ish Yehudi. He's called Ish Yehudi. So the Rebbe says the expression Ish Yehudi, which appears in Tanakh on occasion, you have that expression in the context, Ish, Ish Hoye Be'eretz Utz Ve'iyev Shmei. The word Ish as an allusion to a distinct person you have more than once in Tanakh. But the Rebbe said Ish Yehudi is K'mei Ish Harabayis. You have in Mishnah an expression Ish Harabayis. He's called Ish Harabayis, the man of the Beis HaMikdash. Ish Harabayis is translated to mean the Ish Hoya Mamuna Harabayis. The meaning of Ish Harabayis means the one who was appointed to oversee the Harabayis. So the Rebbe said, what is the meaning of Ish Yehudi? Ish Hoya Mamuna Alinyan HaYehudi. What's Mordechai called? Mordechai is called Ish Yehudi. What's the type? Ish Yehudi, the person who is appointed over the Inyan of Yehudi. What's the Inyan of Yehudi? So it says in Gemara about the Tayar Yehudi, about the denotation, the word Yehudi, that Yehudi means Kefer Ba'avei Zarah, one who denies idol worship. So the Rebbe brings a raya from a Makkah Chazal that any person who is a Kefer Ba'avei Zarah is automatically a Meideh B'Kol HaTeira Kula. If you deny idol worship, that automatically means that you are opposed to, you're Mekabel all the Teira Mitzvahs. A Kefer Ba'avei Zarah is Meideh B'Kol HaTeira Kula. If you deny idol worship, automatically you are acknowledging and accepting and agreeing to all of Teira Mitzvahs. So the Rebbe said the Jewish people at that time changed their name to Yehudi, and of course we're called Jew today, as opposed to in Russia where we're called Ivrei, which means a Hebrew. We're called a Jew. The word Jew by which we're called is not because of Shevet Yehudi, it's a mistake. The word Jew by which we are called is because of this, the Purim. In the Megillah, the entire Jewish nation is called Yehudi, and the meaning of the word Yehudi is HaKefer Ba'avei Zarah, and therefore made the B'chol HaTeira Kula. The Jewish people traditionally were called Hebrews, Ivrim, and when they came to Bavel and Nachman al-Itzlan, they became assimilated culturally and even in marriage with the Goyim and the Goyishkeit. So the Yidden who wanted to hold on to their traditions changed their identity. Instead of being called Ivrim, they began to be called Yehudim. And Haman's beef, Haman's issue was with the Yehudim. So the Rebbe brings in the Ma'amar Veata Teztave this idea that a Jew, he didn't kill people like Hitler killed people. He killed people who were called Jews, Yehudim. And I guess Hitler also killed people who were called Jews. Narva then, there was sometimes Ayin from Mazda Ayin from Makif. So he was only killing Jews who refused to bend. Mordechai is called Ish Yehudi, which means he was the head, he was the Nasi, he represented in a very optimistic way the theme and the Inya and the Neshama of Yehudi, of a Mesiras Nefesh. And Mordechai was the leader at that time. He was Mesiras Nefesh himself, and he rallied the Yidden of his generation for Mesiras Nefesh. And of course, we learned recently a mind from the Rebbe, V'kibel HaYehudim Yud Aleph, where the Rebbe explains that the Mesiras Nefesh on Mordechai had several levels. The first level was that they were going to stand as Jews, and if they would lose their lives, they would lose their lives. Their readiness to be Mesiras Kiddush Hashem. But in addition, Haman had made a gezerah against learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. They continued learning Torah and continued doing mitzvahs. And moreover, he was Makal Kehilas Barabim. He gathered large groups of Jews together to violate Haman's decrees, including children. And it says in the Ma'amar of Tafresh Pei Zayin of 1927 from the Friedrich and Eben that when Haman was coming, it means the Medrash, Mordechai told the children, run away, because Haman is going to hurt me. I don't want him to hurt with me. And of course, you know why Haman was coming. Haman was coming to put Mordechai on the horse and to give him honor. But of course, Mordechai Kvayachal couldn't know this. So Mordechai told the children, run away. So the kids said, we're with you, Anu Itach, Bein Lachayim, Bein Lamavis, we're going to be with you no matter what. And the children stayed with Mordechai, and Haman came in and he had to give him that covet. And of course, there's also the other medrash, which is also brought in the Ma'amar, that Mordechai was walking in the street. And he stopped 3 children. And he talked to them. And then Haman walked over to Mordechai and says, why do you look so happy? This is the Gemara. Why do you look so happy? So Mordechai said, because Besura Teva Bisrani, these 3 little children gave me a good Besura. What was the Besura? He asked the first one, what did you learn in Cheder? So the child answered, Al Tina Mipachat Pisa Mishoyim Sashayim Kisavim. And he said to the second one, and what did you learn in Cheder? And he said, I learned in Cheder, Utsu Eitza Vesufa Dabra Dava V'lai Yokum. And he said to the third one, and what did you learn in Cheder? He said, Va'adzik Nani Hu, Va'adsei Vani Esbel, Ani Asisi, Vani Esa, Vani Esbel, Va'amaleit. In other words, the idea that the Eibishter saved the Jewish people, even when Zikna, right? They've been around for a long time. And their favoritism has been forgotten. The Eibishter doesn't forget. So Mordechai said to Haman, these 3 kids, Bashkacha Pratas, gave me good suris. That's the story. So Mordechai Mesiras Nefesh had many madregas, and he was me'ered by Yidden in Mesiras Nefesh. And a result of being me'ered by Yidden in Mesiras Nefesh, the Eibishter made the Nesa Purim. So the Rebbe in his Ma'amar brings what I just said, that Mordechai was, these are my words now, Ish Yehudi, Mamun al Inyan Mesiras Nefesh, and he was the Nasi Adar, and he rallied Klal Yisrael, he rallied the entire generation for readiness to be Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. And as the Rebbe brings in the Maimorim, that they also have Machshavas Chutz Chatz V'Sholom for 11 months, from Yud Gimel Nisan until Yud Gimel Adar the following year, not one Jew had a Machshavas Chutz. They also have Machshavas Chutz Chatz V'Sholom. No Jew thought to step out and away from the Derech HaTorah VaMitzvah. They were dedicated, they were loyal, and that was it. And the Eibishter made a made in the Knesset. So the Rebbe goes on to say that there is Yed and Dor. In every generation there's Moshe Rabbeinu, there's Mordechai HaYehudi, and the Moshe Rabbeinu and the Mordechai of the generation gives the Jewish each generation what they need. Now, one of the many ideas that you have in the Ma'amar Veata Teztave, which really doesn't get enough time. There's so many ideas about the Tetzaveh. One of the ideas that doesn't get enough attention is the following idea. The Rebbe divides the Rebbes into groups, different types of Rebbes, different types of Moshe Rabbeinu. One of the categorizations that the Rebbe brings is a Rebbe who was the Nasi Hadar Bepeil over the whole generation. A Rebbe who did not lead, shepherd a segment of Jewish people, but a Rebbe who shepherded the entire cloud, the whole generation. And the Rebbe said, not all Rebbes, not all Moshe Rabbeinu had that distinction, but the Rebbe says that the Friedrich Rebbe compares Moshe Rabbeinu to Mordechai, particularly by bringing the Lashon HaMedrash. Mordechai b'deiri ke Moshe b'deiri. Mordechai in his time was like Moshe in his time, because Mordechai, like Moshe Rabbeinu, was the Nasi b'goloi of Kol HaTeir Kula. Achashverosh was a Meshel B'kippah. He ruled over the whole world, Sheva ve'esrim u'meya Medina, and Mordechai reached every Jew in the world through those channels. So the Rebbe said that Mordechai is unique. Not every Rebbe, not every Nasi is the Nasi Begoli of Kol HaTeir Kulei, Kol HaDeir, every Jew in the world. Moshe Rabbeinu was a Mordechai. And then the Rebbe says, the Frierdiker Rebbe brings this in his Ma'amar, and we all know the Teda from the Baal Shem Tov, that Ata Osid Nitein Din V'Cheshben. It says a person comes to Yom Haba, they give a din and a cheshbon. Din means a judgment, and a cheshbon means taking stock. So the Baal Shem Tov asks a kasha, it should be cheshbon v'din. First you take stock, and then you make a din. And the teretz is that the way a person comes l'mayla is nifroi mimenu midaite v'shalei midaite. When they want to give a person a punishment, a reward, they do it willingly, knowingly, and unknowingly. It's a Mishnah. How can it be midaite v'shalei midaite? A person comes l'mayla, nifroi mimenu, they punish him, they give him what he needs, what he deserves. Midaite v'shalei midaite. So the kasha is if it's midaite, if he knows that he's being punished, it's not shalei midaite. And if it's shalei midaite, he doesn't know he's being punished, how can it be midaite? The Teretz says a person comes l'mayla, and they sit him down, and they say, what would you think to do to a person who did kach v'kach? And they run a roster of his life. But they don't tell him it's him. And after he hears the whole mishpat, the whole cheshbon, he passes a din. And after they pass it in, they open up the books, and they make a cheshbon, that's it. They pass nezich alei. And that's the pshat, ata also written din v'cheshbon. First you judge, and then they show you judge yourself. Says the Rebbe, when the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, that the Mordechai is like Moshe Rabbeinu, not only because he was a Rebbe B'klal, but because he was Begoled, the Rebbe of the whole generation. The Frierdiker Rebbe was paskening this about himself. And I saw a Sikha from the Rebbe, from Yitzvat of Shalom Adhei, the 25th anniversary of the Rebbe's Messias, where the Rebbe said that the Rebbe, the Schwer, the Kumen in America, is a Gevarin, the Rebbe, Ibe the ganze Welt. This is what the Rebbe said. The Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, and he became the Rebbe over the whole world. In Europe, and certainly in Russia, he wasn't. Begoli, a Rebbe, a Nasi is Einer. So he is the Nasi of the whole generation. But Begoli, he has his place, and his job, and his avodah. In America, the Rebbe said he became the Rebbe of the whole generation. So the Chanan, Ma'anena Abasrei, if the Rebbe said it's about the Frierdiker Rebbe, it's 100 times as much, 1,000 times as much. Halachas kama v'kama v'kefa keflayim. The Rebbe is paskening about himself also, that he has this distinction. That in addition to being Moshe Rabbeinu and the Nasi Adar, there's a unique category of a Rebbe whose hashpah begoloi is over the whole Dar. So thus say Prusa al kol ha'elam kol. His net extends to every corner of the world, any place that there's a Jew, and even lav lagoy. There's an interest in the relationship, but the Eibishter, the Rebbe hears it, and the Rebbe feels it, and the Rebbe is made a rachamim for him, and he just helps him a pale. In any case, this isn't a Ma'amar. So, like I said before, this is one of those details that when it comes Gimel Tammuz time, where this gets lost in the shuffle. There's so many other things to talk about. This particular aspect of being the Rebbe Begoli of the whole God never gets any attention, so we're giving it attention today. And the Ma'amar goes on to say that not all generations are the same. In the generation of Mordechai, there was Kases Lamoy, because Yidnet Saris Mahaman Arasha Lamoy and Magali Chidish Benefesh. But there are other generations where there's no Kases, where Yidden are not under threat, where Yidden's lives are not in danger, it's not Begashmi, it's not Beruchnias. So you're not Magal Moy, you're not Magal Moy, you're Magali Chidish Benefesh. No, but then you're Magal Chaya, what the Rebbe calls in the Ma'amar Mazal. Right? Mordechai, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe is Orei Yamunah. He shepherds Yidden's faith. What does it mean that he shepherds Yidden's faith? Emunah by a Yid is a Yerusha from the Oveis, Mamina de Mamina. Faith by a Jew is the inheritance from the others. But faith by itself is gone. I believe in the Eibishter. But because I didn't earn that faith, I dive into the Eibishter to help me go against him and steal and even murder Rahman al-Islam. In order to believe in the Eibishter, and therefore to do what the Eibishter wants and not do the opposite of the Eibishter's Ratzon, for this you need to have das, Pnimius, to internalize the faith. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu does. He doesn't give us faith. He brings the Lashon HaZeyad, that the Nusei law, the Emunah, which a Yid has, B'teva, Yitisin, Minoi al Yodach. That Moshe Rabbeinu's job is that the faith which the Eibishter gave us becomes mezenes, it becomes food, it becomes parnasa, it becomes an inyan pnimi for every single Jew, al Yodach, through Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Rebbe says every generation is different. You have a generation like Moshe Rabbeinu's generation, where there was no Mesiras Nefesh, there was no Kasus. And therefore there was no more. You're not Megala the Yechid. That although Moshe Rabbeinu touched the Yechida, Moshe Rabbeinu had Ongerid, Moshe Rabbeinu touched the Yechida. Because every Rebbe, every Nasi, every Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what his business is. His business is Yechidah Shebenefesh. A Rebbe's job is Yechidah Shebenefesh. A Rebbe's inyan is Pnimius. In other words, what makes a Rebbe different than another God will be Yisrael. It's not just that he's smarter and he has to do Meitzir. His Meitzias and his Mahus is that he's Makusher with the Neshamas of Kol Yisrael B'chol Mokum Shehem Mitzat Pnimius. On the inside, he's the Neshama Klalis, and all the Neshamas of the generation that come from him have a kesher with it. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu does. That's the inyan of Moshe Rabbeinu. But Begolui, every Rebbe gives according to the Dar, according to the Adar. And at the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, the generation needed Pnimius, Das. So Moshe Rabbeinu gave them that. So Hitaka touches the Yechidah Shebenefesh, the Pintel Yid. But what was revealed was the Das, which comes not from Yechidah, but comes from Chai. But Mordechai was different. Since it was a time of Shmad, a time of Mesiras Nefesh, so Mordechai brought out from Yidden the Keach HaMesiras Nefesh. He was revealing the Yechidah itself. Kosis, when Yidden have Tzoras, Lamor Yemagal Yechidah Shebenefesh. But the Rebbe says, when you compare Moshe Rabbeinu to Mordechai, Yesh Bazeh, Ma She'ein Bazeh, Yesh Bazeh, Ma She'ein Bazeh. Each one has an advantage, the other one doesn't have. Obviously, the advantage of Mordechai is that because there's Tzoras, Yidden Magal the Yechidah to go on Mesiras Nefesh, but it's not transformative. It doesn't change who they are. The pnimius of the person remains who they are. They push aside themselves. They push away their personality, their mahus, and they go on Mesiras Nefesh. And the Rebbe says, what's the raya to this? Take those same Yidden who lived through a time of Shmad and put them into Arches Arvocha, put them in a place where there's no Shmad. And the Rebbe says, Einin Nikid Kol Kach B'Goloi Inyan HaMesiras Nefesh. Take the Yidden from Russia. Today, the Rebbe said, mit Azef and Azef Yard today, and bring them to another place where there isn't a sakana in being a Frum Yid, and you don't see the Mesiras Nefesh Kol Kach. You don't see so much the Inyan Mesiras Nefesh. Why? Because the Mesiras Nefesh is Magala Yechidah. But the Yechidah pushes aside the person and doesn't change the Mahus of the person. So when the Mesiras Nefesh is lifted, the person is the same person as anybody else. Moshe Rabbeinu transformed his Yidden, his Chassidim, his generation. They became Bepnimius Barei Das. So that was the mile of Moshe's daughter, but he wasn't able to be Magal. But then Yechidah, he was only able to be Magal them from Chayim. So in effect, it comes a question. You can have Yechidah, and you can have Pnimius, but you can have only one or only the other. Is it possible to have both together? That's the question. Can you have both together? So, the Rebbe says, but you have a different kind of generation. What's the different kind of generation? So he gives you the most. Mordechai was a Rebbe during the worst time of the Jewish history. But Mordechai continued being a Rebbe after the Ness happened. Haman was hung, his 10 sons were hung, they killed 75,000 Agogites, plus another 800 in Shushan. Mordechai became the vizier, he became the Mishnah of Achashverosh. Esther Amalka told Achashverosh who she was, that she was a Yid, that she was a Bas Shol, she came from royalty, from Shaul HaMelech's family, and so forth and so on. And he even went from being on the lowest level to being on the highest level. One of the psukim in the Megillah says, "V'Rabbi me'amei ha'aretz misyahadim." Many amei ha'aretz became Yehudim. Keif b'vei zara favas nafal pachad Mordechai aleim. The fear of Mordechai took over the whole world. So what did Mordechai do after the Ness occurred? And Yidden were no longer in a sakana, not Bagashmi Yitzchak Beruchnis. He was still there, Rebbe. What did he do? So the Rebbe says that even after the Ness happened, Mordechai was there, Rebbe, and he continued to be me'ered by them, the Yinam Mesiras Nefesh. How? That they should want to get out of Golus. They shouldn't say, look how good our life is. Yes, our life was terrible. And our lives were in peril and in danger. Now we're free, and our lives are wonderful. It's a chagval, it's a gishmak. So we want Mashiach now. A Yid cannot say, my life is good, I like America. I like Shushan Abira after the Ness of Purim. Life's good, look, he has to win and get a Golus. And Mordechai was made by Yidden of his daughter. After the Ness, another kind of Ratzon to go out of Golus. But the Rebbe says there's a detail here. This third concept, that a Yid should be in Golus, and Begashmis and Beruchnis, his life is good, but it's Helam Vehester in Golus. And therefore there has to be a Ratzon to go out of Golus on a level of Mesiras Nefesh, cannot happen without help. Mordechai cannot do it by himself. Mordechai cannot do that by himself. Mordechai wants to take a Yid who's in a Golos of Arvacha and make him want the Geula Amitis Vashleima, but it's impossible without two more words. V'yikchu elecha. If the Yidden have to become shutz from a Moshe Rabbeinu's work. If they're simply following Moshe Rabbeinu, that's impossible. But when there's a v'yikchu elecha, when Yidden give back to Moshe Rabbeinu, and what do they give to Moshe Rabbeinu? Their mind and their heart and their senses. B'ne'umei, u'b'ksavei, u'b'mameine, u'b'gufei, u'b'nafshe. You give yourself to Moshe Rabbeinu to become a shutef in the work of Moshe Rabbeinu. So when you're a part of Moshe Rabbeinu, you have a koyach from Moshe Rabbeinu to have a good life and desperately want Mashiach. In the lush of the Ma'amar Kosses, Ve'ete von dem in ganzen Zetresel. The Jew is completely shaken up. Hayetachan, there isn't the Geula Amitis Vashleima. And the Rebbe said, this is what Mordechai was me'eded by Yidden in his times. After the Nes. But, since this third Inyan only happens when there's a Vayikhu Elecha, it only happens when the Yidden partner with Moshe Rabbeinu and Moshe Rabbeinu's work, with Mordechai Yehudi in his work. Since the Vayikhu Elecha, in this case, those two poles join. The Inyan HaMesiras Nefesh and the Inyan HaPnimius, which are normally opposite. The more sacrifice you have, the less deep you are, the more involved in depth you are, the less likely you are for sacrifice. The idea that the sacrifice is transformative, that a Yid wants Mashiach, but not he wants Mashiach in such a way that he doesn't think, he doesn't feel, but rather his brain, his heart, his senses have been transformed into a Matthias of a Ratzah for Mashiach. This is the third Inyan in the Maimed. It's the highest kind of Kosses Lamoed, because on the one hand it's Megal Yechidah Shebenefesh, because there's a Kosses, a Yid is totally crushed, Hayetachan Mashiach doesn't come, the Geula Amitis Vashleima doesn't happen, and at the same time it's Pnimius. So by Moshe Rabbeinu there was Pnimius and no Yechidah. By Mordechai during the Gezeidah there was Mesiras Nefesh, there was Yechidah but no Pnimius. And by Mordechai after the Nes there's both together, Sai Yechidah and Sai Pnimius. So of course the Rebbe doesn't say it, but it's kind of obvious that the Rebbe is talking now about himself. When he talked about Mordechai and Tamam Mesiras Nefesh, he said clearly he's talking about the Friedikere. When you're talking about a Yid who lives in the goals of Ashiras, and the Rebbe, Ashiras means Begashmias or Beruchnias, and nevertheless, Kosses Lamoed, in quotes, the Rebbe a Yid vet in ganzen Zetresel, the Jew is totally shaken up by the fact that he finds himself in Golos, to the extent that he wants to go out of Golos the same way Moshe Rabbeinu wants to go out of Golos, which is impossible. It can't be. A Jew cannot want to go like that, but a Sidon, he's a shutef. You know what the word for shutef in our culture is? A Chabad Choseh. V'tzadi b'menasa yichya is not that you rely on the Rebbe, but you have to do the work yourself. When you become a shutef with Moshe Rabbeinu, you participate in the work of Moshe Rabbeinu. You don't simply celebrate his efforts and you send him a check, but you become a partner in the Aved of the Rebbe, the Nasi Adar, that makes you a keli for wanting Mashiach like he wants. And then on the one hand, it's even Yechidah, has the quality of Mesiras Nefesh, and on the other hand, it's transformative. It doesn't push aside your brain and your heart and your mahus, but it becomes who you are. And this is the end of the Ma'amar Veata Teztave. So the Rebbe has this huge build-up, this huge developed idea, which is based, the principle of the Ma'amar is that there's an Iyam from Mordechai, and Mordechai, again, these are my words now from a different Ma'amar, is called Ish Yehudi. He represents, he's the Mamuna, Al Inyan HaMesiras Nefesh, and he rallies his generation from Mesiras Nefesh. But there are different circumstances. Moshe is one circumstance, Mordechai is a second circumstance, Mordechai after the Gzeidah is a third circumstance. We're the third circumstance. That you're in a Golos of Ashiras. The Golos of Ashiras. Baruch Hashem. For the most part, Jews are not afraid. And they're free to learn Torah and do mitzvahs almost in every single corner of the globe. And they want Mashiach. So much that there's an Inyan of Kosses Lamoed. This idea is the koyach that the Rebbe gives us. And that's what the Ma'amar Veata Teztave is about. Veata Teztave in one sentence is about the job of a Rebbe. And particularly our Rebbe. But the Rebbe takes a long time to get to the point of explaining the job of our Rebbe, because he first explains what Moshe Rabbeinu's job was, Das. He explains what Mordechai's job was, and the Friedike's job was, Mesiras Nefesh. And then he explains his job, which is to make us want Mashiach like he wants Mashiach, which is a very, very interesting idea. I heard that the Rebbe was once sitting at home and watching the Rebbe on closed circuit TV. The Rebbe was bringing 770, and she had a video, and she was watching. Someone was sitting next to her, and she commented, my husband, spoke in Yiddish of course, my husband's problem is he thinks everybody wants Mashiach as much as he does. Now you add one word to that, my husband wants, everybody should want Mashiach, then my husband wants. We should want Mashiach, and the Rebbe wants Mashiach. How can you want Mashiach so much? It's the oldest question in the world. How do you want Mashiach like the Rebbe wanted Mashiach? And there's only one teretz. And it's a practical teretz. When you sit and wait for Mashiach to come, it's not going to happen. But when you are involved in what the Rebbe is involved with, in terms of Afatas HaYahadus and Afatas HaMayanus Chutz, teaching people about the Yebishter, and teach people about Chassidus, teaching about Emunah, in the spirit, like the Rebbe said in the Sikh of Chayisara to the Shluchim Tashin and Beis, that the Avedis HaShlichus is finished. And the Shlichus that remains is Kabbalah's name Mashiach Tzidkenu, to greet Mashiach, to Makab Mashiach. So the Rebbe said, what does that mean? You should close all the Bati Chabad? No. You do everything you're doing until now, but now there's only one kavanah, that I'm doing this to be Makab Mashiach Tzidkenu. When the Yid does the Payal, what the Rebbe says to do, in those actions, you're giving yourself to the Rebbe V'yikhu Elecha, and it makes you a kli for this Eid of Kasas Lamoyed, to want Mashiach like the Rebbe wants Mashiach, which is a fantastic idea. And that's the Teichen, that's the spirit, that's the Neshama of the Ma'amar Veata Teztave. So the Rebbe gave us this Ma'amar a couple weeks before the stroke. And there's no tufel here, there's no coincidence. Chachafilu, the Ma'amar was prepared by Rabbi Elkan. And so on and so forth. But the Rebbe works through people. Just like the Friedrich Rebbe's Ma'amar Basi Lagani was also a reprint. It wasn't a new Ma'amar, the Ma'amar was from 27 years before. But we say that it's the Ma'amar Vistalkus, because by the Rebbe everything is precise. And even though it's an old Ma'amar, the fact that the Rebbe gave it out now is a simmer that the Ma'amar is shayches to now. Same is true of the Rebbe. But the Rebbe gave Ma'amar Veata Teztave in the Hagdama, in preparation for the events that would follow, which are undesirable. And in this Ma'amar you have an answer and hadracha to every inyan. I was last night, my mother's sitting Shiva, unfortunately. By the way, she'll be in Crown Heights Thursday afternoon and Friday morning, if you're interested, by my parents' home on Crown Street. So a Litvak was sitting there. He's a smart guy and refined. You can talk to him. He's a Slabotkia. He's from before the war. He's my father's age. He's no youngster. And we conversed in Yiddish, and he asked me, "Nu, daf machen Rebbe." The Babs daf machen Rebbe. Shalom Aleichem, Johnny, come lately. Weißt doch. You weißt doch, was da mit dem Meises wegen machen Rebbe. I told the stories to you before. A young man in Europe was approached by a Chassidish Rebbe, in quotes, in his Kehillah, with an idea that they should make another Rebbe. And he says, listen, I'm not the Lubavitcher, but I'm a friend, and I really care. And I just know, like one of my Misnagdish cousins once told me, Chassidim like a dough, you have to keep on kneading them. You stop kneading them, they become hard. So, this young man in Europe said to this Chassidish Rebbe, with Alamed, what do you want from me? Was can ich tun? He says, du bist doch a macher in the Lubavitch. Tell people, no, I'm not a macher, I'm a small. He says, give it over in my name. And with the end of the story is, it's a long story with many pratim, that years later, this same Rebbe came back to this shliach, who was on his way to America, said, I need you to go to the Tzion, to the oil, and make an apology on my behalf. What did you do? He says, ich hab gemeint, as the Rebbe is avek. Und der Vater hat vorgeschlagen, wir machen noch ein Rebbe. He said, I thought the Rebbe passed away to make another Rebbe. He said, the Rebbe is alive. So I want you to go to the Tzion and to apologize on my behalf to the Rebbe for thinking that there was a need for Hepech HaChaim. You know, a friend of mine told me, I asked him the story, a Litvak, a Masnagid, ran into the oil a few months ago, and he looks around, and he says to everybody here, I need a minyan. And after he got 10 people's attention, he says, I came here to ask Mechila from the Lubavitcher Rebbe for all the things that I said and did inappropriately, and he ran out of oil. I like a lot. Apparently he discovered that it's not a good idea to have a record that's not good with the Lubavitcher Rebbe upon him. So the guy told me, I said to him, you didn't ask him anything? He said, you have no idea how uncomfortable he was with this whole event. But he came in, and he made sure there was a minyan, and Gebet Mechila Vegan. I'm sure this happens a lot. Why? Because the Rebbe now is more alive than ever. Now, I feel how misnagdim b'yidim b'zeh. So it was last night that this guy tells me that Machar Rebbe. I said, what's Machar Rebbe? What kind of joke is that? And I said to him, it's Vachseis Adar, a generation is growing up who never saw him, that's really his Chassidim. He doesn't know how to eat that. He doesn't know how to eat that. They just don't know what to do with that information. They just don't know what to do with that information. A Rebbe, I tell them, a Rebbe makes the Rebbe. You don't create a Rebbe because you have a vacancy. A Rebbe makes the Rebbe. The Rebbe made a Rebbe. That's all there is to it. The Rebbe made the Rebbe. He's a Rebbe. And I told him, a generation of kids are growing up, they're more Hasidish than their parents. They're more Makusha than their parents. What's the criteria? The criteria is V'yikchu elecha. V'tasnit vergessen. Chassidus is not about going to the oil and screaming Yechi and loving the Rebbe and kissing his picture and telling your children, say at night, I love you, Rebbe. The connection to Chassidim and the Rebbe is to do bepayo what the Rebbe wants. You give yourself to the Rebbe gives himself to you. It's really very simple and really very, very serious, and it's very realistic. Nobody could say I can't do anything. There's no such thing as I can't. Everybody can do something, yet not everybody can build Russia like Ber Elazar. Not everybody has that schus, and not about those kishayin. Yeah, but everybody is a Rebbe Mensch. Every Lubavitcher Chassid. You can't sit around and wait for Mashiach to come. You have to do. And do means Pasha, be Makar of another Jew. Whether it means putting on tefillin with him, or giving tzedakah for him, or with him, or through him, or learning Chassidus with him, or talking to him about Mashiach. We have to do deeds, actions. Why? Because the Rebbe said in that Ma'amar that the ability for the Rebbe to be mashpia on us, when he needs to be mashpia on us, which is kosis lamoy, that a Yid should want Mashiach like he wants Mashiach, cannot be without our partnership. Mordechai did it unilaterally. Moshe Rabbeinu did it unilaterally. In this time, it has to be bilateral. It's only possible when there's a shutfus. That's the nekuda, that's the pnimius, that's the oimek, that's the soft, that's the tachlis, that's the chasima of the Ma'amar Veata Teztave. And that's the Chazbainim Zayin in there. So now this is the 24th anniversary since the Rebbe gave us the Drush. And 24, I don't know myself as a koch from them. 24 has to do with Teda. What's the connection between 24 and Teda? Rivka took water, yeah? Which she gave to Eliezer and his donkeys. What's the word for the vessel that she used? A kad. Kad. Vatamala kada vatol. Kad. Chov dalet. So it says in Chazal that the Chov dalet, the kad that the Rivka used goes in the Chov dalet Sifri Kedesh. The Tanakh has 24 svarim. 24 svarim of Teresh B'Ksav, of Mikra. And that the kad that the Rivka used was a tamala, kad of atol, she went deep and she brought out the Teda. So it's the 24th year since the Rebbe gave us the Kunteris, and it has to do with the idea of Chavdal Sifrei Kedesh, and which means basically you got to learn it. I remember when the Rebbe, one of the first Kunteris the Rebbe gave out was Heicholzim, Tavshin Memches Chaf Cheshvan. The Rebbe gave out the Heicholzim. And at that point, the Rebbe said he's giving it only to people 12 years of age and older who could learn it. And the Rebbe came to Gizak, each one, I got it also. Ahatzlacha Dikin Lenin, he handed it to you. Hatzlacha Dikin Lenin. The Rebbe would not say it in the subsequent Kunteresim, and the later Kunteresim he started giving even to Nekis, Mamish, to babies, to newborns, got to Kunteresim, but the Rebbe gave that Kunteres. He said, Hatzlacha Dikin Lenin. And Chabez Chaf, the Kunteres, Vatetzava, Hatzlacha Dikin Lenin. And that's the Rebbe is a Chavdalet, and I'm sure you know Mestama also tells Ma'amar Chassidus, V'samti Kad Kaid Shimshei Sayech, there's a posuk. We have Kad Kaid, Kad, Chavdalet and Chavdalet. So on this posuk there's a Gemara, that the Gemara says, what's such Kad Kaid? That there's Shayam and Yoshvei, there's Yosef and Binyamin. And it's explained by Riches and Chassidus. What's the difference between Shayam and Yoshvei? Shayam and Yoshvei, which is last week's Kriyas HaTeira, the 12 stones of the Choshen. So Yosef is Shayam and Binyamin is Yoshvei. What's the difference? They're both precious stones and they both have light. The difference is one has a natural light that shines and the other one doesn't have a natural light. You need to bring a light to bring out its own light. So this explains in Chassidus that the difference between Shayam and Yoshvei is one is called Er Yosher, light which shines from heaven to earth, and the other is called Er Chezer, it's a Teda which only shines when you make a kli for it. And so the Gemara says, "V'sham samti shamshech samti katkei shimshei sayich katkei." So the what's like katkei? And for the Gemara, that there's Shayam and there's Yoshvei, and there's a Shaila which is better, which is better. And the Teretz says l'hava kadein v'kadein. Katkei means both types of Teda. It's glad they can't get to Purim. Like Hudim Hoysa, Oira. There's two Tedas. There's Teda Oir, and at Purim we have Teda Oira. What's the difference in this Teda and this Teda? This Teda comes from the Eibishter, and this Teda comes from Yidden. So in the Chasim at the end of 24 years, they will give us a Kuntres. So that's also a Remes, b'negei to the particular time. But the Ikir is like Hamed Reshikir Allah HaMaise. That's the ultimate Maise.